SpaceX announced that it would switch gears to begin producing more Raptor engines, testing Super Heavy booster prototypes, and preparing for the first orbital launch of Starship. The plan is for Starship to blast off from the company's Starbase facility in Texas atop Super Heavy, which will return for a landing on a platform in the Gulf of Mexico after separation, while the Starship vehicle continues on for a quick trip to orbit, followed by a splashdown landing in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Hawaii. The flight plan has been stymied by a number of delays, largely tied to the process of getting a launch license from the Federal Aviation Administration. The company's application first had to go through an environmental review process that lasted for several months, concluding with the agency allowing the mission to go forward but requiring SpaceX to make dozens of modifications to its launch plan. SpaceX successfully test-fired 11 of the 33 engines on its Brobdingnagian Super Heavy rocket, a beast of a machine that, when all of its engines are lit, will produce more than 7.25 million kilograms or 16 million pounds of thrust, nearly double that of the SLS. The Super Heavy stands 69 meters, 230 feet tall, and serves as the first stage carrying the 50-meter, 164 feet Starship spacecraft. The entire stack, also known as Starship, stands nearly 40 stories tall, again easily beating out the SLS's 32 stories. Unlike the SLS, of course, Starship hasn't yet flown, but the engine test is preparatory to a first uncrewed launch of the rocket that could happen later this month, though it is likelier to occur in the first quarter of 2023. Whenever the ship launches, it can't come too soon. NASA has selected the crewed upper portion of the Starship stack as the landing craft for the Artemis 3 mission, which aims to have American astronauts back on the lunar surface as early as 2026. Meanwhile, NASA's Artemis 1 uncrewed mission around the moon, which got its boost thanks to the SLS, has been going precisely according to plan. As the space agency announced, the latest step in that plan took place yesterday at 4:53 p.m. ET, when the spacecraft currently in lunar orbit fired its engine for 1 minute and 45 seconds, putting it on its path for a final close lunar flyby before heading home for a planned December 11 splashdown. Starship and Super Heavy are the biggest, most important pieces of Elon Musk's grand plan for SpaceX, his private spaceflight company. SpaceX's short-term aims are to supply cargo and astronauts for the International Space Station, provide transportation and seats for private customers like Axiom Space or billionaire Jared Isaacman's Inspiration 4, and fly Starlink satellites and payloads for other customers aboard its Falcon 9 or Falcon Heavy rockets. But the revenues flowing in from these projects are raising funds for Musk's larger goal of moving deep into space. Musk has repeatedly stressed that he founded SpaceX back in 2002, primarily to help humanity colonize Mars. It's vital that we become a multi-planet species, the billionaire entrepreneur said, citing both a much reduced probability of extinction and the thrill that meaningful space exploration will deliver to billions of people around the world. Critics say we should instead be focusing on climate change and other issues on Earth. SpaceX is now actively trying to turn this sci-fi dream into a reality. The company is developing a 100-passenger spaceship called Starship and a giant rocket known as Super Heavy, which together constitutes the transportation system that Musk thinks will bring Mars settlement within reach at long last. This is the fastest path to a self-sustaining city on Mars, Musk said in September 2019 during a webcast update about the Starship Super Heavy architecture. While the spaceship has yet to achieve orbit, it has already attracted lucrative contracts from Isaacman's Polaris program, Japanese venture Dear Moon to fly 8 artists and a billionaire around the moon, seats for billionaire Dennis Tito and wife Akiko on another moon mission, and at least 2 landing missions for NASA's Artemis moon program. Starship first came to light under another moniker during a 2016 presentation by Musk, in which he laid out the basic idea for this so-called interplanetary transport system, a large spacecraft and a huge rocket, both of which would be completely and rapidly reusable. The rocket would launch the spacecraft into Earth orbit and then come back down to Earth for a vertical propulsive landing. The name was new. Musk previously referred to this envisioned concept, though much more vaguely, as the Mars Colonial Transporter. He also referred to this system as the Big Falcon rocket, although now it's more simply called Starship. The spaceship, meanwhile, would make its own way from Earth orbit to Mars or the Moon, or any other desired destination. Musk said the craft will eventually touch down on such alien worlds and take off from them as well, without the need for any additional landing craft or ascent vehicles. The separate rocket is needed just to get out of Earth's substantial gravity as well. Off-Earth refueling of the ship is therefore key to Musk's vision. For example, spacecraft coming home from Mars or the Moon will need to be topped up on those worlds using locally produced propellant. Both vehicles will be powered by SpaceX's next-generation Raptor engine, which is more powerful than the Merlin engine that propels the company's Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy rockets. The system is now called Starship, and the huge rocket is now called Super Heavy. At first, SpaceX still planned to build the Starship vehicle out of carbon fiber, but in January 2019, Musk announced that he was switching to stainless steel. Steel is a bit heavier than carbon fiber but has great thermal properties and is far, far cheaper, Musk said. He has since called the material switch the best design decision yet made on the project. In May 2019, Musk said the current plan calls for 6 Raptors on the Starship vehicle rather than 7, and a few months later he tweeted that Super Heavy will now sport 35 Raptors instead of 31. That brings us to the last substantial design update before test flights, which Musk presented on September 28, 2019, from SpaceX's South Texas facility near the tiny village of Boca Chica. The billionaire didn't announce any huge changes, though there was some more engine news. Super Heavy will now have space for 37 Raptors. Though not all of those slots will be filled on every flight, each mission will probably require at least 24 Raptors on the booster, Musk said, and prototypes these days typically fly 33. Musk had previously estimated the total development cost of the Starship project to be between $2 billion and $10 billion, respectively. On September 28, 2019, he said that the price tag for SpaceX would be toward the lower end of that range, probably closer to $2 or $3 billion than it is to $10 billion. Musk told CNN Business during an interview shortly after the design update, Starship has flown half a dozen times in hops or high-altitude flights, while a small test system called Starhopper to examine the Starship concept achieved 2 brief, untethered test flights at Boca Chica before being retired in late August 2019. Starship's next major milestone is a flight in Earth orbit, but SpaceX is awaiting approval on its plan to manage environmental concerns at Starbase, the facility in South Texas where Starship is launched. The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, has been reviewing the public feedback, speaking with other government agencies, and then assessing SpaceX's progress on 75 action items of a programmatic environmental assessment. All told, SpaceX has not made any flights of Starship since May 2021, although it does engine firings frequently on Starship and Super Heavy at Starbase. Musk's first version of Starship was an eye-catching 165-foot-tall, 50-meter Starship prototype called the Mk-1. It was supposed to be used for a test flight, but exploded during pressure testing in November 2019. Version Mk2 was worked on but never completed, while Mk3 was renamed to SN1 in December 2019. SpaceX then did a series of ambitious ground tests to assess how much punishment its versions could stand up to, which in part led to a series of Starship versions blowing up during testing. SN1 was destroyed during pressurization tests in February 2020. Version SN2 has been tested and decommissioned, still intact, although both SN3 and SN4 were destroyed in other tests in April and May 2020, respectively. The FAA would determine whether to grant SpaceX a license only after SpaceX provides all outstanding information and the agency can fully analyze it. An FAA spokesman said Monday SpaceX did not return a request for comment. Starship is poised to be SpaceX's flagship rocket system once fully developed, succeeding the company's fleet of reusable Falcon 9 rockets as a more powerful and fully reusable ride to space for large batches of commercial satellites, space tourists, and professional astronauts. NASA in 2021 picked SpaceX's Starship to land humans on the moon around 2025 for the first time since 1972. That mission, under a roughly $3 billion contract, requires several spaceflight tests in advance that could delay the 2025 moon landing mission.